So previously, in the previous week, we got basic introduction into what exactly happens in cybersecurity. What do you mean by different jargons in there, and what are the base stuffs that we need to understand? What is the cybersecurity, right? Predominantly in this week, this is basically we're going to talk about one of the important fields called penetration testing and infrastructure security, right? Simple ways we can also talk is bug hunting opportunity. We don't usually call it as a bug hunting when you're doing at a corporate level, right? It is called as a penetration testing, and we will look into that. How it is my approach, right? Predominantly, I work as a penetration tester. I check. I definitely. It's a simple way of telling you are hacking, right? So we don't use the word hacking or cracking in corporate environment. We use penetration testing as the main thing out there because we're trying to penetrate the application, check what is possible. Is it possible to break the application and things like that? So we'll look into that, the job structure, what exactly it is there. And penetration tester is one of those jobs, right, where I have seen it is quite neutral when it comes to your background. I've seen who have come from biology, we have done biotech, they're coming into pen testing, chemical engineering. One of the, quality pen testers out there is from a chemical engineering background. And there are guys who come from, no education background also. I've seen very good quality pen testers who have a lack of, there is no, apart from their high school degree, there's nothing much with that part. So it is very knowledge intensive, it takes a lot of effort, but it has quite a rewarding opportunities as well. Right. So let's look into this, understand what is this, and go with that part. We'll do a little bit of what we have done in the previous week, right? To have that control, the process of moving forward for that. So basically, we're going to talk about confidentiality, integrity, and availability, right? So here, basically, these are the three fundamentals of any security program that is available out there. This plays a very important role, right? Confidentiality basically means about a particular information. Only a certain amount of people can view that information. The word view is very important. Meaning only who are authorized to see, right? Let's say your email, whenever you receive an email from your boss or someone, only people who are in that mail chain can see that mail. No one else will be able to see that mail. So if either someone else is able to see that it be called as a lack of confidentiality or breach of confidentiality. Integrity is very much similar. In integrity, what happens is that we are able to modify the data, right? It could be modifying, meaning adding new data is also modification, deleting the data is also modification, or adding already existing data to something else is also modification. For instance, if I can change your phone number in your bank account details, right? That is also a modification. Or if I'm deleting certain information out of your bank, that it is without authorization, that is also integrity, breach of integrity that is available out there. And final one is availability. This is a very important one. Here, there is no breach of confidentiality or there is no breach of integrity as well. Like you're not losing any data or anything. It just prevent a normal user from accessing the data or accessing in a clear way you have to tell, accessing the service. Simple example we can tell is that a couple of months back, there was a Microsoft blue screen where there was an issue, right? All over the world, lot of Windows 11 operating system stopped from booting up. They came within some error message, and that was due to some compilation from CrowdStrike. They had some issues with that because of that. That was not a legitimate one, but that also can be taken as a loss of availability if someone can use that as a process, and it has occurred, right? We can bring down a server during, especially think about if during time of Christmas, a lot of people purchase a lot of products online as gifts and everything. What if someone loses their server during that time? If a t-shirt business who even a single day downtime in December is going to have a significant impact compared to weeks worth of downtime in some other time, right? So that is the issue with availability that we look into that part, right? So those is main thing. Again, there is also something called as a triple A. This is the second layer. It is somehow related to CIA itself. Everything that happens in cybersecurity will come back to CIA itself. you know Triple A is basic and much more, a deeper understanding of CIA itself. Yeah. So authentication, authorization, and accounting. In authentication, basically talks about what you are, right? So you are identifying yourself to the uh, system, server, or anything for that. For instance, you have a door lock which is number enabled. You are putting a key value of that. So at that time, that is you're authenticating by entering the PIN number of that. Same thing for your mobile phone, right? So you're identifying yourself. You're entering your username and password. Authentication basically occurs in three types, right? It talks about either something something you have, or something you are, right? Something basically talks about your username and password that you remember. You put it there, or it may be a PIN number for your mobile or a door, and then you're going to get access to that, right? Something you have basically talks about your access cards. That is something you have. It's a physical token that you use to get inside or outside. In some cases, certain devices will need a physical device to get into the system or authenticate yourself, right? In some cases, if you see couple of years back, I don't know, they still use it or not. You used to get, for whenever you log in, you need to get a device where you put your debit card or credit card in. It will generate a pin, and based on that pin number, you will be able to log into a device. That is there. And something you simple way, biometrics. Same thing, what you are, that is your fingerprint, that is your face, your retina scan, and anything that comes into play. All right, that is deals about authentication. But if just because you are able to log into the application does not mean that you have access to everything, right? For instance, when you log into the bank, you cannot access your parents' banking details, or your wife's banking details, your husband's banking details, or friend banking details without having a specific authorization for that. And that is called as an authorization. Authorization is a process of checking an authenticated user, okay, will have access to what resource. In a simple way we can think about is, let's say you're working in a company, you go to the main entrance in the reception area, you swipe in, right? You are able to get inside the building. That authenticate that you're an employee. But which floor you're going to have access to, it is going to change, right? A cafeteria is a place where which floor that will have everyone will have access to. But others, unless until you work in that particular floor, you will not have access to that. Meaning it is checking whether you are authorized to access. Same thing happens in your applications as well. Right? And finally is accounting. Accounting plays a very important role. Right? Accounting is, you can tell someone is, we need to track what activity is done by what user, right? In a large organization, in a banking environment, if there are servers, if an admin is running any root commands which require administration privileges, is going to be recorded. He is going to tell at this particular time sudo command was used by this particular admin and things like that. And that will, in the SOC, it will raise an alert. You will have to give justification for why he was running that part. Let's say if it is restarting the system, that again will require a process for that. It is not easy in this process. In some cases, in the application also, whenever you delete, that something has to be recorded as well. A log file is going to be there. That is going to be there. Okay, that is going to tell which user connected to at what time and what resource was deleted by him and how many rows are deleted for this app. Okay? This is very important. It is very important. Couple of, I think long time back, I was working in a company. Uh, there, what happened was a user accidentally deleted about 10,000 lines of data. Right? But instead of coming out and telling out and try to help recover, he kept quiet because he knew that it was important data because 10,000 lines of customers is equivalent to 10,000 customers data is lost. It's a large company, multinational company. So what happened was they were somehow able to recover the data because some other team was not able to work because the data was lost and they were able to recover the data. But they were able to identify this particular person deleted also because there was a log in the server telling that this 10,000 entries was deleted and a particular disciplinary action was taken against that employee later stage, right? It would have been much more easier if you have done, and this could happen. In this case, this person deleted by accident, but there are cases where people delete it by choice. They do it for sabotaging the companies. Sometimes they get fired. That is the reason your access is removed first before you are told that you have been let go, right? They want to prevent users from deleting data. That is the case, right? So, but my question is, right, how do you know your network or your web application is secure? How do you know that hackers cannot gain access to your services, right? How do you know that part? And that is where the VAPT comes into play, right? So in the movies and all, you might have seen there will be big bank vault and things like that. And usually they'll get someone, if you might have seen a series called White Collar, there they would have, the guy, the main hero in that is actually a thief in the past life. So they will use him to check how a thief would have come in and what are the things, the tricks they use by them and things like that. Similarly, a VAPT is going to focus on activities that is going to be done by an hacker itself, right? We are going to go there and we are going to hack the application in real time. What same tools that we are going to use by the hackers will be used by us and do the same kind of steps and everything is going to remain changed. The only thing that is going to just differ is the principle here, right? So what is that we are going to be doing out there with the data? Once it's compromised, a bad actor or a bad hacker is going to use it to do his own, for his gain own personal things. Whereas we are going to use that data to create a report and educate the team, telling that these are the vulnerabilities that are there that we are going to, you need to fix it, right? So this security testing can be divided into two parts. One is vulnerability analysis and one is penetration testing. What happens in a vulnerability analysis is we are just going to focus on checking, running some scans in that, right? We are going to, assessment process used to identify and assign security level to as many security defects as possible in a given time frame. Process involves automated and manual technique varying degree to rigor and emphasize on comprehensive coverage. Here, the vulnerabilities are identified, not exploited. Means usually done with some of automation tools. So basically, here what is going to happen is that we will, right, just like a doctor will be able to identify what illness you're having based on the symptoms and doing some tests. So that is what is going to happen out here, right? We are going to run some scans on the services, on the application, on the infrastructure, and based on certain things, we are going to look into that way and tell this is what the vulnerabilities are there. But here we are not going to hack the application. That is what, and this is predominantly done when you're dealing with the real-time data, right? Usually what happens is that in a penetration testing tool where we actually go quite aggressive and try to break everything, there is a separate testing environment given to us because it will break the application, right? There are many cases. Recently we're doing a pen testing, they gave us the actual server itself. We told it's not a good idea, give us a testing server will check, testing server will be exactly the same way, every setting and things. They would have cloned it, they told no, we are quite secure and things. Half an hour into the assessment, the application broke, right? It went offline for more than couple of hours. It took them couple of hours, and they told, okay, fine, let's give you, we will stop the testing here. Tomorrow we'll have a testing server separately for that, So in those situations where we are doing actually in the production, we have to be very careful. And in those, vulnerability assessment makes much more sense, right? So one of the tools most commonly used there is Nessus, right? And Nmap and Quali. Nessus and Qualis are something which we see quite used quite often. When we're doing a bit more manual, we tend to use Nmap out here. It will tell us what are the vulnerabilities and things like that. It will be very useful out there. Uh, these are in network infrastructure tools, Nessus and Quali and Nmap. They tell what are the issues or the vulnerabilities that you have in your infrastructure, right? They are going to give in that, but it will not tell from a website perspective. For understanding it tools from a website perspective, we can use Acunetics. Zap is a free version that can be used by us. It's free. It will help us identify a lot of vulnerabilities. That is good. So these are the main tools that we'll see. But here we are not actually pen testing. We are not actually putting a malicious payload, making the system crash or anything. It is going in a recent process out there, right? And most of the time, we see the infrastructure level, we see VA is what being used, right? Because infra predominantly they run, everything is live, and predominantly from an VA infra perspective, VA network scanner tools are pretty good. They can identify almost certainly in all the vulnerabilities that are available out there, and that is very much important, right? But from a web application, pen testing is required out there, because authentication authorization is one of the things, and session management are a couple of things that cannot be automated that effectively with the tools available right now. It is getting better, with the AI. Some of these tools are using AI to make this scans much more accurate, but still there is a lot of manual intervention required in those cases, right? So here there are three major objectives in vulnerability assessment. Identifying vulnerabilities ranging from critical design flaws to simple misconfigurations. So misconfigurations and design flaws will be there. A lot of time people will use the default settings and they'll let it go. They'll use the same thing. In those times, it's misconfiguration. There could be design flaws that could be identified using predominantly in applications. This will be there. Document vulnerability so developer can identify and reproduce the findings. All right. So when we give the document to the team, the development team, that this is the vulnerability that is there, they should be able to do that and they should be able to replicate in their system. You know, most of the time, what happens is that once we're done with the testing, we give them the reporting. They very rarely they try to reproduce it themselves. They will have a call with us and they'll ask us to reproduce it on the call, and we'll show them what is happening out there. Right. So that is very much important. Again, we should also be able to guide them. And most of the time, about 80% of the time, developers will be able to figure out what is happening out there. Not only developers, system administrator from an infrastructure perspective. But there are cases sometimes they will not understand how do we provide the solution, how do we fix these bugs. In those situations, we need to chip in and we sit down with them. A lot of times, even we will not be having an understanding, but it is where we do the research, because we know the vulnerabilities better. We know how the application is working, because we would have sat with the developer to understand that before we start the engagement, and then we'll come up with that. There are cases, certain times a standard what we give that may not be relevant, It may not be possible because the way the application is designed, and we still don't want to leave that. So we'll find a different ways of doing about it. That is there. So how do I go? Right? What is my process out there? So one stage that is not present here is the initial contact with the client. Right? The client will connect with us and give us the infrastructure information and things like that. Or what happens is that they will give us access to the network. There are two ways that is going to happen. One thing is they are going to give us a VPN access to the network. We'll sit down in the network and use it. Or what we also do is that we also get to the systems or the network on the company premise itself, and we connect our laptop to that part, and then we are connected access given for that. This happens rarely nowadays since VPNs are much more, you know, uh, relevant nowadays. A lot of organizations do have. So during this, once we are connected to the network, what we do is we do a network discovery, right? There are most of the cases nowadays, the network discovery part is not needed because the client is going to give us all the IP addresses of all the devices that need to be tested. In some cases, they would like to see what we do. They sell, and hacker will not have access to the IP addresses, right? So how does it go about that? So in those case, this initial phase from us is going to be network discovery. We'll try to identify what net devices that are there in the network. Then once we have done that, for each device, there's something called as a ports or services running on a particular port. So we'll try to understand what's happening, what port numbers are open, and what services are running. Right? If port number 80 or 443 is open, it's a predominantly in a web application that could be running out there and things like that. So when we get information about, let's say there's an Apache version running or an SSH version is running, we're able to get hands on that. The scanner tool will have a database of all the vulnerabilities for that particular application name, right? For instance, that is going to be present out there. So vulnerability scanning and detection is going to check for that, is going to come up with that part. And once we get that, we'll try to resolve it, right? We'll come up with the mitigation technique, what is going to be there. And once this is there, all the vulnerabilities should be resolved. And again, we are going to integrate with the application and check whether the vulnerability still exists or not. Okay. And if exists, we are going to redo the process again. If it is not there, then you are going to good to go with that part. But VA is not something that is going to be over once in a while, right? It has to be repeated. A lot of organizations like banks and critical systems run their VA once in a month, right? It is important, especially for the critical infrastructure. If there's that, it has to be keep on updating again and again. That is what. So that is a continuously securing that talks about. We are going to do that. A bare minimum for an organization that VA should be done once in a year. That is the bare minimum that should is going to be there, right? So so there are cases. It's within some cases they do it once in 15 days also, right? So this is what a predominantly a network scan will look like, right? Here you could see there are different critical, high, medium, low, and information. These are the different levels of vulnerabilities. So it shows which are the vulnerabilities that need to be fixed and things like that. And here you could see, in generally we don't see this many. This was one of those cases where we ran. That is where you could see in the top part they're using about 54 hosts were identified, meaning 54 devices were there, and it had about 75 critical vulnerabilities, 289 high, 384 medium, and low, and information. So this is how it goes. Critical usually will have very less time to fix. In certain organization, they tell it should not be more than 48 hours. Right? Once a critical bug is identified, it should be fixed in 48 hours, nothing more than that. Right? High will have bit more time. 30 days is something. Medium will have 60 days, and low will have 90 days to be fixed. And information is something, it is not going to be, it is basically telling that it is a violation of best practices, but it is not a vulnerability. It is a good idea to fix it, right? So that is what is important on that. But pen testing is where we are going to be very, very much interested in, right? So we have to be very careful with this part, and not all organization would prefer it, right? Because it's quite intrusive. Here we are actually simulating the attacks using the exactly the same processes that is done by a normal hacker is going to do that part. We'll see how with us it's going to be there. So here there are three types of testing. One is white box, one is gray box testing, and black box testing out here. As a pen tester, predominantly we'll be working on gray box testing, right? Black box testing is rare, is probably the more rarest from a pen tester's perspective. White box testing do occur, and white box testing do occur predominantly in a DevSecOps environment. So I'll tell you what exactly I mean out here, right? I'll exactly we understand what you mean from that part. So what happens? A simple application, right? A simple application will have multiple things, right? It will have a server, it will have code, it will have other infrastructure part and things and all. A lot of things that is going to be there. Then again, it will have users also, user management and things like that. A white box testing, meaning I will have complete access to everything, right? For instance, let's say if someone in the development team is actually doing a pen testing as well, activity as well, predominantly in a DevSecOps environment, that is going to be there. He will have access to the server. He'll be able to get inside. You'll have the server login credentials. You'll be able to log in as root user and check out what are the things that is happening out there. He will have access to the GitLab and GitHub or for that code. He'll be able to look at the code as well. If there is a database, he will have access to the database and everything. Now, what you mean by white box is a complete access. Everything is going to be there, right? So predominantly, I don't work in this case. I do. There are certain clients, but most of the time, about 80%, I don't work on this. Only about 20% of my work will be in a white box. My 95 remaining 80%, right? In that 75% of the time, I'll be focused on gray box testing. So here, what is going to happen is that I don't have access to the server. I don't have access to the code. What they will give is that they will give me the URL for the website, right? This has been given, and they will give me the usernames, right? Usually, what I will do is that server login is different and application login is different. Yeah. In application, there will be an admin guy. I will have two credentials for admin guy, and normal user will be there, and I have two credentials for that. And at the same time, they'll also give me a walkthrough. What do you mean by walkthrough? Basically, walkthrough is that a developer will sit with me or with my team. He is going to explain how the application is working. He'll tell this is the login page, you have to log in. Once you get inside the application, there are many buttons in the application. So he'll tell me what each button is doing, what is a complete flow, right? If you take a gym membership account or a website, where once there will be one page for enrolling a user to the gym, that is going to be there, that I will test. An admin guy will be there, and once you're as a customer, you will have access. You can book classes and things, all those things. That is what is going to be given to me. This information is going to be there. See here in gray box, I don't have complete access. No complete access, right? Only partial access is given to me. That is what happens in a gray box. But in the black box, right? no info. Actually, it's almost zero info is given out there. Only thing they're going to give me is the URL. Right? They want to actually check if an hacker comes into play, how this is going to be there. This happens very rarely, right? So I don't know. This is quite difficult as well, right? This is quite difficult as well because I only have a target website. I don't have username. I don't know what server it is running, what OS it is running, what code it is running, what language it is used. I don't have any information or anything. I need to build it up and from there and do it out there, right? And this is quite difficult because there are certain times you don't have access to the admin credits and things like that, right? So this is very difficult for the process, right? The reason why we don't do this process all the time is that we go with gray box is that it is not always the hacker that will gain access to the system. There's also an inside job, right? Your employees could actually be doing this activity. That also need to be covered. So hence the gray box is much more available or supported out there. That we'll see into that part. So that is what a different types of testing basically deals about. And the hacking phases are also there, right? Different hacking phases. So one is the reconnaissance phase, the scanning phase, gaining access, maintaining access, and clearing track. When we are doing in a real reconnaissance phase is more relevant when you're doing black box testing, because in reconnaissance phase what happens is that we don't have any information about the company and things like that. So how do we collect information? All right, let's say I want to know what kind of a service they're running. Are they running a Windows server or a Linux server? How do I know? Right, inside, because inside the network I will not have access to that. So there could be is that we could go on LinkedIn, try to look at the employees, look at job postings. Are there any administrator job postings? The job posting is having a Linux administrator means they are running a Linux servers. If they're having a Windows administrator, meaning they are running Windows servers out there. And we can have much more clearer. Let's see, when we look at the employees and we look at their skill set, their certifications, and what is their job profile and things, it will give us a lot more other information. All right. And we also can look at the Google Maps to get certain time, certain information and things like that. That is going to be there. But this is where we are not directly interacting with the actual devices on the company premises. This is purely doing an recon, check what is happening and doing and things like that. In a bank robbery movies and all, you will see robbers or the thief will go, they will scope out, they'll check how much time it will take for the bank police to arrive if there is some kind of an attack or anything, someone tried to steal, and where is the safe, who is responsible for the key and everything. All those things are going to be meant out there. That is the scanning is where you actually do the VA scan, vulnerability analysis and things like that, where we are getting much more direct information. You're actually connecting to the servers, connecting to the network and trying to gain access. Right? That is what, and we'll identify vulnerability during this case, right? Trying to identify vulnerability in this case. And if something there is a vulnerability that could be exploited, that is going to be exploited. That takes you to the next phase, that is gaining access, right? You will gain access to the server and you are able to steal data. This is where predominantly most hacks stop, right? They've gained access and they're able to receive this information and things like that. That's going to be there. But sometimes what is going to happen is that they don't like to low, right? There is a vulnerability that because of that vulnerability, I'm able to gain access for that. Let's say there was a FTP smiley attack. That particular version of FTP was vulnerable, which gave anyone complete access to the file system. So they were able to take up with that part and all. Right. So in similarly, we'll have some kind of an application where we can gain a root access to the server. But VA scans go quite often and they might fix it, right? When they fix this vulnerability, we will no longer have gain access to that because that vulnerability cannot be exploited anymore because it got fixed. In order to overcome this scenario, what they will do is they will try to maintain access. This could be like, creating a backdoor and do a lot of activities and things. In one case, what happened was a server was hacked, and hacker, what happened was that he created a user inside with the root privileges, with the pseudo privileges, and kept quiet, right? And that actually the vulnerability got fixed. And after 4 years, they identified that someone had created, and that guy was stealing data for 4 years, right? Even though it was server was patched and everything was secure, they forgot to review that process, right? So that is maintaining access. And clearing tracks, basically, as I told, accountability. For every action, there's a log is going to be generated, and that is going to be processed by certain machines and certain applications. If I delete the logs before it goes to the analytics part, no one will know that the system was hacked. You know, clearing tracks is something happens very rarely. It only occurs in a big, large hacks. And most of the time, we don't see much. Maintaining access we are seeing nowadays, right? So that is going to be there. So any questions till now? Right? Any questions till now?
No questions.
Hello?
Yes. Please go ahead.
Can you hear me, sir?
Yes, I can hear you.
Uh, talk about the reconnaissance stage of the answer. I try to struggle with the information you provided at that stage. So I didn't hear properly, so I was lost there. So I believe.
I didn't. I think your voice is breaking up. I'm not able to understand your question.
Hello?
Hello, your voice is breaking.
Hello?
Medan, any idea what he was asking about?
No, I even
I said
Larry.
you talked about the reconnaissance stage.
Can you type the question in the chat?
Yeah, it will be better if you can, text it, because it is very hard for us to understand your question.
Yes.
Hello, good afternoon.
Yeah,
Yes,
Jeffrey.
please.
Yeah, my question is on the scanning stage. Can you hear me?
Yeah, please go ahead. Yeah, I can hear. Please go ahead.
Okay. You listed lots of scanning tools, Nmap, Nexus, Zap, etc.
Yes.
Okay. Um, can a ethical hacker or a cybersecurity security analyst just use one, focus on just one, or is it possible for him to know all?
Predominantly, they are going to work on one of those tools, right? So what happens is that these tools are license based. The organization will look into them. They will have these licenses for that. It will predominantly work in a similar pattern itself. It is just like, are you going to learn just to use a Firefox browser or Chrome browser or Edge browser? All of them will have a similar, about 90% in the way operates. It's going to be very similar. There are certain things that is going to be varying of the small sections out of it, right? So based on the basic scan and the VA scan and whatever the things that could be run, all of them, we need to understand how it works in the background. But if you understand one tool, it is not going to take much time for you to migrate to another tool. Meaning, if Nmap is something, it's a very text mode. It is predominantly used by pen testers. It is not very specifically used at an enterprise level. There are certain organizations, they will ask you to do a manual pen testing of the infrastructure. At that time, they don't take consider Nessus tools or quality tools outputs out there. The reports of them is not going to be supported. In those cases, only we'll use Nmap. Nessus, if you learn how to use Nessus, you will be able to understand how to use Quali. And if you're using Quali, it will be able to understand how to use Nessus, right? As a security analyst, if you're doing VA, you're working predominantly in the infrastructure part. When I spoke about Acunetics or ZAP, that is at an application level. That is predominantly done by the development team. You're not, If you are part of a development team, looking at the code, looking at the application, that is when you'll work on those two tools out there, right? There's something called as a NetSparker. There are quite a few web application scanner tools out there. The one most commonly used are those two. So that is there. In DevSecOps, nowadays they are preferring to use that because they can put the, instead of manually scanning the application every time for web application vulnerabilities, they can put it in the CI/CD pipeline only. So it will automatically scan and give a report for them. So that is what happens. So that is what we do in our main course. We set it up and we'll see how Zap is going to be useful for that part. Yeah. Hopefully it's
Okay,
resolved.
thank you.
Well,
Yes, I have a question as well.
yeah, please.
Okay. Can you hear me, sir?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. So basically, it's on the scanning. Tell me how do you calculate the timing? Like, how do you know that I should put timing 1, 2, or 4?
Uh, See, when you are going to put the timing out there, for instance, you're talking about Nmap is what I guess, right? Because
Yes.
you'll have T1 to T5 out there. We have to see what is the payload that you're going to push out there. And predominantly, what happens is that when you are going to scan a large network, for each network, you cannot do top 1000. By default, Nmap runs a top 1000 ports for each of the devices that is there. And that is not going to cut in a real-time application because what happens in real time, they will change the default ports, right? For instance, SSH may be running on 22 in most cases. It is my security recommendation. It should be moved from a default port and to put to some other port, a random port that's going to be there. So whenever I'm doing an Nmap scan, I will have to scan all 65,000 ports. Okay. And
Oh,
that includes both TCP scan for 65,000 ports, UDP scan as well. Because you'll never know there is some information in a UDP scan as well. So this is going to take a lot of traffic out there. Okay. And if you put it at T5, this is going to cost, actually it will be, we can consider it as a DDoS attack. It could actually break the application, right? That is one thing. This is happening because we have already informed the team that we are going to do scans on this particular time. Okay. So they'll be expecting, but still it will bring down the application. At that time, it is good to learn, go with T3 or a low speed, medium speed scans like that is what I would suggest. But more predominantly, thinking about T1 to T5 is that we'll have to ask the development team or the infra team out there what would be an ideal time to do the scans for them, right? So you have to interact because when they'll give you the infrastructure that need to be tested, they're going to give out the timing when it's going to be there. So usually when we do scans, it is going to be off hours. If it is an application used by the employees, we are going to do the scans in the night. We have to burn the midnight oil and run the scans, or in some
okay.
cases over the weekend, right? At that time, even if your scans break the application or the server, you'll have time to bring it back up without affecting the application. I know the users, actual users out there. So usually we'll see over the weekend and in the night for the weekend over the night for that, right? So that how it works. That's it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Welcome. Welcome. Any more questions, guys? Any more questions?
Or we can take
Hello,
that.
hello.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
saw
Jeff.
one. I saw a video at some time. What web? We're using what web. So I want to ask: is what web part of scanning or reconnaissance? And also, when scanning, won't the network, the administrator, get notification that someone is trying to like get information from them, or is it going to be discreet? Thank you.
So it depends. It entirely depends on lot of things, right? First of all, if they have any kind of a dashboard for monitoring process, they will get that information, right? So once happened, what happened was there is a web page. The login page did not have any kind of a rate limiting. I could have, I tried more than a million passwords and one of them clicked and I was able to log into the application and break it, right? This breaking a million password, it took a long time. It probably because the server was low, I had to send million requests and I see the response and things like that. In this case, there was no mechanism by the team to monitor the application. Are they getting too much traffic? Are they getting too many authentication failure or things like that? That is not there. So they were not able to see, and I was able to get inside that, But at the same time, there are many clients who will track this, right? So what happens is that as soon as you enter five wrong passwords, your application gets locked, and immediately you'll get a call from the team telling that you entered the wrong password. Are you sure? Are you the person who is trying to log in, or someone is trying to crack into your system account, right? So all these things entirely depends on the team's defense mechanisms or what are the appliances they're having out there and things like that. A large organization, I told, or a critical organization, they will have something called as the security operation centers. And there, even just by plugging a Wi-Fi dongle can generate an alert, right? It will take you to you'll, unless until you're directly connected to the system, you will not be able to do any activities without VPN and things. Again, the security is expensive in those situations, but that is how it goes. So it depends. Are you managing? Are you checking accountability or not? Right. So if someone is checking the accountability and what is that, that can be done. Especially as I told, in those situations, what we do is that we bring down the scanning rate to very low, right? So we take it, if you're actually doing a black box testing, the team will get more time to work. There, what we do is that we, instead of doing 65,000 port scans in a single go, we break it into 10 ports each and every time, and then we'll go one by one, right? We'll try to understand process and things. All those things will be there. It's a bit more complicated when that happens, but most of the time, small organizations will have very little mechanism to detect attacks, right? So the way they design the application has to be important at that time. That's what. Hope that answered your question.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Any more questions?
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Yes.
please.
Can I talk? Is someone talking?
Yeah, please.
Yes. To get Nexus, are you able to get the free one, the free version, or do you need to purchase one?
For the Nessus part, you
Yes.
will need to, I think you will get a free version for it, community edition, but there's a limitation. You can only scan only one IP with that part, right? So if you want to practice scanners and scanning things on your
Mm.
open, you can use something called as a open VAS out there. There's a tool called open VAS. You can use it. It provides a similar support. What happens in real time is that the difference between a free tool and a paid tool is going to be the time taken to update to the latest vulnerabilities, right? And OpenVAS will give you the latest vulnerabilities. Let's say there's a new vulnerability identified today. A Nessus or a Quali will have a scan ready for it by tomorrow morning, right? And it will be able to check for that. Whereas when you talk about OpenVAS, since it is free, people are working on it for in their free time. It will probably take about a week's time for that. Why? Because all of them will have a similar database. So for you to practice, understand how scanning works, and to mitigate and check all those things, OpenVAS is a good place to start. Right?
Okay.
Yes. Security as a defense, that is what we have to be careful when what we do from a DevSecOps perspective training. We do both offensive and defensive. I would typically call it a purple course, right? When you are doing hacking, it is called as a red teaming. When you are defense, it is called as a blue teaming. When you combine both, you will get purple. That is what we do. We talk about in the course what is the Linux and Linux services, what a typical admin guy or a DevSecOps engineer would see, and how do we secure those services out there, right? So we'll look into that. And then again, we'll also look from an application pen testing perspective. What are the different WAS top 10s that is there? Can we hack in their application? What are the difference can be broken out that's going to taken? And then we'll see again how to have a CI/CD pipeline from a DevSecOps perspective. Yeah, that is there. Yes, Jeffrey, you were so Menon, would like to add anything before we continue?
Yeah. So should we take a 5 minutes break or should we continue?
You
Yeah,
should
probably I think we can
continue.
take it. Yeah, Menon, what we are going to do? Should we take a break for 5 minutes?
Yeah, I think that will be great.
Okay. We'll just
Meanwhile,
continue, come back. Yeah.
yeah. Meanwhile, if you guys have any other question, feel free to ask.
Not for now.
That's great. And please
I
remember,
would I
if
would just like to ask about
yeah,
I would like to ask about the IP about the target IP address.
I think Mr. Karthik is the best one who can answer. Wait
Yeah,
for
please
two or
let.
three minutes
No, no,
because
you can tell me.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay, let's say that my target IP address uh, is myself. How would that work?
I didn't get you. Come again. Target IP address is?
Let's say let's say just for practice, I don't have any other uh, devices, so I'm
Okay.
using my own IP
Maybe.
address for
Okay.
target practice.
Mhm.
Is
Yeah.
that possible?
Yes. Yes. So it is, see, predominantly in IP addresses, if you're having a public IP address, a single IP address is totally fine. Let's say a lot of the cases, what happens is that when we do infrastructure scanning and things, there'll be a single IP only. Their AWS server they're running out there, and it will have an IP address. From that, it is going to be connected with that part,
Mm,
right? So that is how it will do. In some cases, if you are trying to connect to a system which is behind a firewall and you're having only one server which is having a private IP address which cannot be routed over that, in those
mm,
situations, what is going to happen is that we will not be able to do traditional scans out there, right? First of
mm,
all, we will have to remote access to that server because it is in a private network, either by a VPN or by like tools like AnyDesk or anything like that. We'll connect to those systems and then we'll do manually do some other things out there. Meaning, in a Linux environment, we can check certain commands will help us out with which ports are running out there. That is going to help us out. And since we already have access to the system, we can even see the versions of it. We can go to the settings, configuration, and look and check for configuration. That is going to be in a different approach for that part.
mm.
So IP
So
addresses is predominantly it's not going to be it again. It depends whether can you access or not. That's the thing.
mm. so so for my last question for this session, should we all move to Linux because yeah we speak about Linux mostly.
Uh, if you're what happens that Linux is useful, very useful out there. Main reason is when you're running your lot of tools and things for security purposes, it is designed for Linux out there. And about 80% to 90% of all servers that are used in the world are run on Linux services, right? What I have seen, the only place where we are using Windows Server for the application is very limited. For every 20 to 30 applications I test, one of them may be a Windows Server. Predominantly, they're used in Active Directory, managing user desktop username and password access for that. They use Active Directory servers, and Windows servers are very good for that. That is bad. But having a good understanding of Linux helps you out very well.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Understood.
Thank you.
Please, is it will it be wise for me to download the Linux, or I should based on Kali Linux, the Debian form? I don't know, because some like
Uh,
it's only on
I would,
Linux.
I would, I would prefer, so a lot of people would go and install Linux in a dual boot environment. I would usually prefer them to go with something called as a VMware workstation, right? So let me show you. And this is what we do in our real-time example, labs, what we do. So I can run multiple Linux operating systems inside my system only, right? I can practice Kali Linux, I can practice Ubuntu and things like that. If you're someone, right, if you're someone running the services, I would suggest Ubuntu. If you want to practice hacking, I would suggest Kali Linux. Yeah. Just give me a second. Just give me a second, guys. One second.
So it's fine if you have a virtual machine.
Yes, I'm back. Sorry. Yeah, let me know. Any more questions?
Yes, I was saying so. That means if you have virtual a virtual machine, it's fine. You don't need to install Ubuntu and stuff.
Mm, exactly. And I would suggest
Oh,
to go with virtualization. The main reason for having a virtualization is, sorry, if you make any mistake out here, it is quite easy for me to delete it and spin up a new virtual machine, right? Configuration things and all. It will take reduce your time of troubleshooting, right? You can start and things and all. But if you have manually installed it on your system, if something goes out, reinstalling Linux can be really difficult. And sometimes you could actually lose some data as well if you don't install it properly, right? So this helps you out, and you can see that I have multiple virtual machines out here, and each for different scenarios, right? It will help you, right? So there is no difference in my case between Ubuntu and Kali Linux. The
Sorry,
only
Karthik,
difference yeah,
are you sharing?
once. Oh, you're not seeing the screen? One second. Let me share. Thank you.
Okay.
So for instance, if you could see here, for me, there is no difference as a Linux user. In Kali and Ubuntu, everything works exactly the same. All commands will work and things and everything. The only difference is that in Ubuntu will not come with a pre-existing pen testing tools, right? Whereas in Kali Linux, if you log in, you can see the left side, there's a dragon symbol. When you click on it, you have a lot of tools. It comes pre-installed. So if I'm able to install those tools in Ubuntu, Ubuntu can also be used for pen testing. Kali Linux will come around with about 700 plus tools for pen testing, right? And to be frank, we don't use that all those tools out there. Uh, there are certain tools I use for my activity when my in my organization when I'm pen testing or hacking the devices. I use predominantly is Windows, right? The main reason is The important tool for me for hacking a web application is my browser, right? There are certain add-ons that are there in my browser that is important. And there's one more tool called as a burp that I use it for my pen testing activity. So since that is running on Windows, that is more than that. But still I use my Kali Linux for running certain tools. There's something called as, WAF woof and things and all. WAF woof is something like checking whether the website is having a firewall or not, web application firewall is there or not. So those kind of tools will not run in Windows, right? So the reason why I prefer Windows is that end of all pen testing engagement, there is the most difficult task of all, that is the reporting part, right? There we need to collect evidence. For that, we will need Microsoft Office. Without Office, there is LibreOffice, but it is not going to be difficult doing that. Just for that Office purpose, I would prefer using the Microsoft Windows. Otherwise, you can do pretty much output with that. If you're new to Linux, I would not suggest to start with Kali. Start with Ubuntu. Uh, Install and go practice and things. Learn to run, do the services, right? Understand how exactly it's happening on that. That will help you out a lot. Right? And VMware Workstation is also free for personal use. Recently VMware got acquired by Broadcom, and Broadcom made it free for personal use, so you can download the ISO and things like that. So that is what we do in our class, right? So because predominantly what you do in Linux in your desktop is what you're going to do on your cloud machine as well, or whatever that is going to be there. That's how it goes. Hope that was useful. So any more questions?
So for practice, VMware is enough, right, sir? For if I get a job in a company,
Hmm.
I have to use
Hmm.
Linux, real Linux.
Correct. Correct.
Okay.
So
So
VMware,
then,
see, mhm.
okay.
Yeah, please continue. Please continue.
So then I need to learn this one. After VMware, I need to learn Linux. There is no option.
Yes. For see, if you're what kind of job openings are you looking at
No, I'm a
within?
fresher right now.
Okay.
I'm looking for DevOps. I'm very interested in DevOps.
Yeah.
So I
Okay.
asked a question. Should I install Linux? Uh, dip, okay, like that.
Yes, yeah, yeah. So in those situations, learning Linux is very much important. That should be a priority one. Okay. So DevOps is always depend on built on Linux itself. For DevOps, Docker plays an important role.
Yeah.
99.9% Docker is installed on Linux only, right?
Mm-hmm.
And even if you're running your Docker image on Windows, the
Okay.
underlying Docker image will 95% and almost 100% will be a Linux image only out there. So learning to understand what is the Linux services, not only Linux commands and things, you have to
Mm-hmm.
focus on what we do in the main course. We focus there. How do we install web application? We'll see how do we configure web server, how do we configure an SSH server, right? So SSH server is something when you're in a remote server, how do you connect that and then you control that system out there? And we see other services like FTP and Microsoft MySQL
Mm-hmm.
and things like that. So how
Okay.
that is working, and then how you focus on the firewall and things and all. So all those
Okay.
things will help you with managing the part out there. So Linux will help you out. It's a bit cheaper. Uh, Virtualization, VMware Workstation is just an underlining application on top you are installing, right? It is
Mm-hmm.
also user friendly for you to do
Okay.
networking part also. For instance, if you can see here, I
Mm.
can try to communicate two devices also using VMware.
Okay.
Okay. So I can try to see, let's say this, I'm trying to open, there is a web server running on this machine, right? So I can try to open
Yes.
that web server is working on here.
Oh,
129
inside that you
belongs
are
to,
opened.
yes,
Okay.
yes. So this is the IP address you can see. I have config.
Mm-hmm.
This Linux Ubuntu machine IP address is 128.172.129. I can open here and check it out. So these are all done in our main course. We'll go through that part and things like that.
Okay.
Here I would add one thing from my end. Uh, See, Linux is like a fundamental thing of cybersecurity as well as in our DevOps culture. Now, Linux does not come as a DevOps directly, but to make our students ready for DevOps job role and make them a market ready. If you check our main course module, we there are two modules are there. One is Linux, one is AWS. Because if you want to be a DevOps engineer, you have to have uh, expertise on Linux as well as any one of the cloud or maybe multiple cloud.
Yes.
And that is the reason, though the Linux and Linux and the cloud is not direct part of the DevOps, but without that two things, you cannot understand, you cannot learn, and you cannot get the job. And like to face that thing in our DevOps, the main course that is the 7 weeks daily 2.5 hours. The
Okay.
first 15 days we are covering Linux from scratch to more than fundamental and AWS
Mhm.
cloud.
Okay.
And luckily our plan got success uh, tremendously. And after you complete our DevOps training, if you want to move to cybersecurity or DevSecOps position, these
Mm-hmm.
particular 3 or 4 tools which we have already covered in our DevOps training, like Linux, AWS cloud,
In the
Docker,
main course.
yeah, and CI/CD. Actually, we are also going to cover those stuff like surface wise in our free course as well. And that is the reason our DevOps sessions, free sessions, are 8 weeks, 8 Saturday sessions, because there are lots
Okay.
of things to cover.
Mm-hmm. So I need to install Linux now.
Yes. Yes. Sunil. So are you
Yes.
from US or India?
I'm from India.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. There's a
Without
lot of
Linux,
things
you
that,
cannot.
yeah, without Linux it's quite difficult. Yes.
Okay. Okay.
And
Thank you, sir.
again,
And
you're welcome. Again, I think a lot of people will like to come into DevSecOps. If you don't have pretty much good understanding with DevOps, it becomes
Okay.
bit more challenging to do the DevSecOps part.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are joining the course, I would suggest start first do the DevOps part and then do
Okay.
the DevSecOps. It makes
Mm-hmm.
things much more easier. It saves
Mm-hmm.
you a lot of time and a lot of confidence level also. It's going to be, you'll be able to much more better attend interviews when you do that both.
Okay.
now
We'll
you can
see.
just try to understand from the name, from its DevSecOps. So developer security ops. So in DevSecOps name itself, it is saying you have to know DevOps and then security.
Okay.
Just a
Yes.
funny fact. Any other question? Or we should start again, resume our today's session on the pen testing. Okay then. Yeah, Mr. Karthik.
Yeah. So now we saw what are the different hacking phases that could occur of that. But again, we should also know what is that it is in our hand, right? If there's a vulnerability, what is that we can do to mitigate that vulnerability and things like that. So in my career, when I'm looking at different page and identifying vulnerabilities, hacking and things and all, I can differentiate these vulnerabilities in three phases. So vulnerabilities can occur in three different locations. One is the vendor software, other is configuration file, and third one is the code itself, application code itself. So vendor software is the location where a development team or any company will be able to do nothing about it. If there's a vulnerability, they will not be able to do anything about it. able to fix it. Only way for them to fix it is either to update to the latest version of the software or to remove that software entirely so that the mitigation is done. Because the reason is I don't have access to the source code for that part. I cannot do anything about that part. Okay. So that is why it is always important for us to constantly check, is there any new vulnerabilities available for that or new updates that is done out there, and then go ahead with that part. Right. And in one of the organization I worked, they had a particular web application firewall. It was built on top of Ubuntu and it was dependent on Python. Right. So all of a sudden, what happened was the Python, there was a security vulnerability that came into play, and they told we can't run those services on the cloud anymore. We can't sell that product on the cloud anymore because our product had a vulnerable Python. There was no issue with our code or anything, but still we could not continue. And the problem was when we updated the Python version, there were certain functions that were no longer supported. So it was a bit of an issue. We had to rewrite certain part of the application to match to the latest version and things. And that is a major problem. That is one of the reasons a lot of companies, even though they know there's a wonderful version, they don't change it or update it because the application is going to break. But in my case, I think it is important that you have a better approach to how do you manage this kind of an activity, right? But vendor software is something you can't do anything about. You have to sit with that part. The second part is the configuration files, right? Configuration basically deals about how the application is set up, right? Who can have access to that and things and all. For instance, we can tell it is not a good security practice to allow a root access of the server from a remote machine, meaning inside the system you can connect directly, login, physically login as root user, but via an SSH you should never give root access for that. In some cases they might have configured it wrong. They might allow it to give root access for that, right? There could be a lot of things that is going to be there. Configuration file management can be identified using going through checklists, right? See, as benchmark checklists are there. Certain times what could happen is that, let's say I'm installing certain software or certain Linux operating systems that will come with a default, right? That will come with the default certain products out there. So that is not needed. So we have to be careful to go back and check and remove all unwanted softwares and things and all. That is where a configuration file that comes into play, right? In some cases in databases, they will have default username and passwords. They will have other situations that could be done. That can be problematic. Okay. Configuration file management security vulnerabilities is usually fixed by the network or system administrator. It does not deal much with developers, right? Any development team will have two parts. One is the operations team and who are managing how to do that, and the development team is also there. So the operations will take care of that part, configuration. But when it comes to web application code, right, that is where a developer will have complete access over to mitigate that part out there, right? It could be an XSS attack or an SQL injection attack or an SSRF attack or things like that. That can be overcome by properly writing the code perspective out there, right? So in a simple way, vendor software company will not, or the team will not have anything to do with to mitigate that risk. Only thing they can do is they can prevent, update the software. They have very little say in that. But the other two, configuration file and application code, they'll be able to make modifications to that part, right? So this is what we spoke. In recent times, we have seen automation, IAI in cybersecurity, but it is still in a very early stages of it, you know. So automation describes a wide range of technology that reduce human intervention in process, mainly by predetermining decision criteria, sub-process relation access. This is and embodying those predetermining in the predeterminations in the machines. That is what is an automation about. Official definition for that. An official definition for artificial intelligence is ability of a computer or computer controlled robot to perform tasks that are commonly associated with the intellectual process characteristics of a human. Right. I personally believe, right, automation is basically certain set of steps that is going to be repeated. And AI is the ability to take a decision and what decision that's going to be there. Right. And the intelligence, what we talk about is again, there's a difference. Right. What do you mean by intelligence? Because a intelligence at an Einstein level is different and an intelligence at a chimp level is different. But both of them are intelligence itself. Right. There's no difference. They are an higher intelligence and a lower intelligence, but still certain intelligent activity is being done out there. Right. So that is why we have to be very careful about when we're using the term artificial intelligence out there. Based on what I have seen, in my understanding, I personally feel automation is like a washing machine, right? You're taking in human task, which is a repeated human task again and again, and giving it to a machine to be performed, right? So here, what happens here is that in automation, I have to complete, yes,
Karthik,
yes,
sorry for Mr. Dev, can you please stop the video if possible? Because it is, if it is not an issue.
Sorry, Miran, did you say something to me?
No, no, I'm talking about Mr. Dev Paul.
Oh, oh,
Yeah,
okay.
Okay, I'm just trying to. I don't know. It's showing it is off. You can see my screen, is it?
no, I can
I
see
can't.
your video, like your camera is on.
Yeah, let me. Okay, just go ahead. I'll try to do it.
Sure, thank you.
In this. Okay.
Yes, Mr. Karthik. Yeah, sorry for
Actually,
interruption.
I'm in the MS meeting.
Yeah, you are in Microsoft
Microsoft
Teams meeting,
team meeting. Uh,
but your camera is on. I
let,
don't know. Yeah, you are aware of that or
yeah,
not?
let me
No issue,
see
not
the.
at all. Take your time, not an issue. Yeah, Mr. Karthik. We
yeah,
can continue.
okay, no problem. Yeah. So predominantly, we see automation is that as a simple washing machine, what we can tell, we are automating our day-to-day washing process into that. But in automation, in a washing machine, everything has to be pre-specified. I have to decide looking at the clothes what type of a wash it's going to be. It's going to be daily wash or something. It's a kids, the baby cloth wash, or it's going to be very dirty clothes and it has to be much more intense wash. How much time I'm going to do and what is the cloth type, rinse cycle and things. Every
Is my
decision has
video
to
gone
be
now?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
so well. So every decision has to be made earlier before an automation has to start, right? So everything you are going to take this decision out there. That's what it's going to do. Whereas in artificial intelligence nowadays, you're seeing the washing. One of the things where we see is that your refrigerators or your washing machines are getting intelligent, right? There are certain AI intelligence being added to that. There's a lot of things that could be done. So if all the decision is made by the machine, then it is going to be an artificial intelligence. For instance, when we are putting this dispensing detergent out there, nowadays there are machines that will automatically decide based on the content, right? So what is the water content, how much it is going to be there. Then again, it is looking at the quality of the water, and based on that, the decision is going to be made, and more and more. So as we go further, the more intelligence it's going to become. It is all you have to do is that you have to put the clothes inside, and it is going to decide everything on its own, and it is going to give the clothes out, right? Same thing will happen in real time for us, right? And currently, when you're talking about CI/CD pipeline or things into that, artificial intelligence is not into play, right? So what is going to happen is that every step is predetermined. I'm going to tell what needs to be happen, and these are the steps. If something goes wrong, what should happen? If goes right, what should happen? Everything is done. That is where we are looking at the automation, and this is what happens in our intelligence gathering and network security practices as well. For pen testing activities, still a lot of automation work is there. But as we are moving further, right, there is a significant research that is happening in the background, especially DARPA from US Defense. They are working on real-time applications and artificial intelligence where it will identify vulnerabilities on the system on the go. And not only that, it will also fix those vulnerabilities on the go as well, right? There's still a lot, long way to go, but there is a lot more process that is happening out there. There's a baby steps that is happening, but we are going to see. We should keep an eye open for these tools that are coming in and how AI is going to be used here as well, right? That is what. So, what are the current challenges in offensive security? You know, when you talk about offensive security, it's predominantly pen testing and things like that. So, your attack surface is expanding here. So, meaning, think about if you go 10 to 15 years back, companies did not have work from home. All of them were using desktops. Very only the senior management used to get laptops at that time. And the attack surface was less, meaning there was only one server and from where it is going to work out. Nowadays, getting into a company, the attack surface has increased. So meaning server is there. I can hack an employee's laptop. I even hack his mobile phone and get inside a company. I can gain inside a company using your email. Then again, apps are there, mobile apps that can be used, that can be done in there. And work from home option, right? They're no longer directly connected to the company network. They're connected to a public facing network via that it is there. So that is going to be an issue, right? So then again, advanced threats are coming up, new threats that is coming into play. We have to be very careful with that, not only from a technical point of view, from a social engineering point of view also. We are engaged with companies where companies reach out to us to perform a phishing attack, right? They'll tell, we want to check how our employees are good at identifying a spam, are they clicking on that or not. So what we do is that we do a lot of collect about information about company employees and things. We have customized messages for that which will have a higher click rate, but there are certain basic things they will not look into. They're just looking at the message, they'll click. And there are certain cases where they would have given company credentials as well. So that is also we need to take into account, right? Diversity of assessment, there is constantly changing, different assessment that needs to be done. Previously, only infrastructure testing was enough. Nowadays, you have to do infrastructure testing, then you have to do cloud pen testing, then you have to do web application, then you have to do mobile, then you have to do API, and now introduction of DevSecOps and the pipeline also need to be secure, right? So, what are the different things and things? And then again, how do you assess? That is also changing, is there, right? And again, adapting to dynamic environment. For large organizations, this is bit less important because what happens is that they will have a predetermined set. Companies like large companies like Amex or Cisco or anything, they will have a predetermined security posture. This is how they're supposed to follow and things like that. And anything new adaptation has to be tested before. So it is dynamic, but not to that level. They follow a much more basic structure. But it is in the small to medium organization which are growing, adapting to dynamic environment is going to be difficult. Why? Main thing is the team is growing as the organization is going to be successful. It's going to add more people into that. The team is growing. They will need new equipments, new approach, new way of doing things. So they have to constantly adapt to that environment as well. That is one thing. And balancing automation and manual testing. Automation can, in the current instance, cannot replace manual testing, right? The main reason is the lack of intelligence that is there. Looking out whenever we do normal lot of automation scans, there is a lot of false positive in scans, right? And the main thing is, even though there is no vulnerability, they will identify something as vulnerability. There's still a manual intervention that is required out there. On top of that, there is a limitation to do that. There are certain things that has to be manually tested. Those things we have to go with manual testing, right? Then again, tools that can be used, whether these tools can be customized and things and all, it makes it bit different. It not only talking in terms of pen testing perspective, tools that is going to be coming up, right? We are seeing in DevSecOps, the tools are constantly changing. I think Jenkins is one place where there is little bit of stability because a lot of tools, older tools support is good. But you see in the newer versions, the tools are constantly evolving and things they still need. It is not as stable as the DevOps tools that are available out there, right? Finally, there is a communication and reporting, right? It is reporting is very, very important in cybersecurity, right? Because in history forgotten is a history repeat is going to happen on that. If we forget our history, there's chances that it is going to repeat. Meaning, if we forget our past mistakes, those mistakes are going to be done again. So reporting and communicating properly is very important to the development team, and reporting is also going to help team with the future team, because let's say I identify a vulnerability and the current team is going to know, and next future application development they are going to fix it, they know what is going to happen on them. But let's say as time passes, the people in that team move out of that team and works on different team, and new people are coming in, they will not be aware of that bugs that were there in the previous, so they might repeat. If there's a report available, they will be able to go through it and understand what can be done out there, right? And finally is data analysis and threat intelligence. Here we have to look at, from a design perspective, what vulnerabilities could occur out there and try to mitigate, bring out, clear the vulnerabilities at an earlier stage itself. Analyze the data, what is the vulnerabilities there, and look into that part. These are difficult things that is going to be there. Security is going to be very difficult, right? And your AI intelligence is going to future. It is going to help you with this part. Then it will help you out automatically trigger certain actions. Let's say someone talk about what if there's an attack, and will there be some way for an administrator to mitigate that attack, some attack happening out there. So they, for the attack to occur and for that attack to be given to the administrator, and administrator taking a necessary action, right? For that, multiple things has to happen, right? And there's a time involved. Again, the competency of the administrator also comes into play. What kind of an action that is going to be taken, and is it correct or not, right? This is where an AI is going to able to do this better task. It can identify there's an attack happening out there. It will be able to take a decision. I think right now we have something called as an IDPS, which is an automated task. It has a set number of activities when there's an attack. But what if it can be do a better intelligence out there, right? So that is how it is going to do, and it will understand better, right? Especially, I'll tell you what happens was there was an attack vector that they had a huge list of log files, right? In a traditional approach, it took about 40 days to analyze, and only after the 40 days they were able to understand how the hacker got into the system, because the data was so huge, so many log files. It took about 40 days to do that activity, right? So next came in the big data analytics out there with little bit of intelligence involved out there. Not too much. It took same thing in a 4 hours time. Same task was done in 4 hours time. Think about if you can introduce AI in a real time with a little bit of intelligence, we'll be able to even reduce that 4 hours to a couple of minutes or even seconds, or it can be instantaneous, right? So this is where the research is going towards an AI agent that is going to take into account, and it is going to do that part of that. You know, predominantly how it is going to here, a lot of things can be done by AI, and again, it has to be done. What is that you're actually going to do? You know, so either are we going to do manually, are we going to do, AI is going to do this part, so that can be done. So for instance, AI looking at, it can do a reconnaissance by itself, it can do scanning and things. Then looking at that, whatever the information it received, it can come up with a planning for that. How do you do with that part? And then also it will tell what is the attack vector that can be done. See, here we're not talking about defense. Here we're talking about attack as well. And AI will be able to come up with a plan how to attack an application, right? More than this is happening quite a lot. Bad guys are using more. As we saw earlier in previous session, state actors like, or intelligence agencies, country intelligence agencies are more keen on getting AI into offensive security, right? So once this planning is happening, there needs to be an approval from the user. A manual user has to be done for executing the attack. And once attack is done, it will, the output is again given to the AI out here. The AI is going to look at the analysis, look at the result, then it is going to tell, okay, fine, there's some modification I can do. Let me replan it, then re-execute the planning, reasoning, have a plan ready out there, and this process can go on out there, right? This is going to reduce human interaction. AI is going to stay, right? It is not something it's going to, but it is not, I personally think it is not going to be as aggressive as people are thinking. There is an time taken for that. We might see a lot of AI in voice and pictures and things creation, because that lot of work has been happening for a long time in that, right? There's a lot of automation work is happening before they were able to add little bit of intelligence. And again, more people use it, and the more it is going to get effective. But when it comes to cybersecurity, less people are using it, so it will take time, but it will still be there, right? There's a huge research that is happening going on there, right? So all different tasks can be done by AI security testing out here. So identify potential entry point in different stages and things. I think hopefully I feel it should be more prioritized in report generation because what happens, it's really difficult. I think I almost quit my pen testing job because of reporting once. It can be really difficult, because I test. There are applications where I finish pen testing and checking very vulnerabilities in 3 days, and I'll be sitting on the report on 2 days, doing nothing, trying to see the sentencing, aligning, and things. Hopefully, we'll have a tool for that, AI based. But other stages also, it is good to put up there, right? A AI tool can be used to do reconnaissance. We can give a target website. It will do a Google search, look at all the different places, collect as many information as possible, analyze what could be the threat landscape are we looking at, right? And come up with a plan how to test it. Then again, when we give out vulnerability scanning, it could automatically adapt, right? In most of the cases, we'll have to fine tune it, whether it's Linux or Windows, we're looking at certain things, and then certain times we have to redo those scans in a pen testing approach. That may be done by the AI itself, right? Then analyzing it also, certain attacks are not directly vulnerable. We have to combine 2 to 3 vulnerabilities to make a bigger one. That is where automation scans are not. They'll tell there are 3 low level vulnerabilities, but hacker will know that if I combine those 3 things, I can get an high or critical vulnerability. I can even have a compromise. That cannot be done by the automation tools, right? So vulnerability analysis, root cause, what exactly is can AI is going to be there. And I personally feel exploitation is something is of a gray area, right? A machine is going to decide how do you hack into these devices, coming up with a plan. But it is happening. It is happening in real time. Uh, you have to be good with that part, right? It has a much more bigger impact as a society if your country is not in your favor, comes up with this kind of a capability, right? They can, because think about, we technically always think pen testing websites and things like Amazon shopping carts and things and all. What happens if someone hacks into a nuclear power plant, right? What happens if someone hacks into a dam, right? They can open the dam doors, flood cities, towns, kill thousands of people. All those things, it's possible, right? So we have to be good with that, and AI is going to help you out with that. They can help you come with a better plan, better access. It can try so many different things, right? So that is what we see. Yeah. From an AI perspective, but AI is not something for you to be able to use AI. An underlying understanding of the applications is very much important. What environment you're working on for you to guide the AI in a better way, it's important, right? So that's it for today. Any questions? Any questions, guys?
Yes, sir, I have a question.
Yeah, please.
Sir, you previously checked that the WF00F command to check the URL. Sir, what is for penetration testing or vulnerability test?
That is for, see, that is a reconnaissance phase tool, right? So every application nowadays, it is recommended to have a particular tool called Web Application Firewall. So WAF is a tool that will check whether that web application is behind a web application firewall or it is having no protection at all, right? Because if there's a web application firewall, our attack approach is going to be difficult, right? Because a lot of our malicious code, what we test, will be removed by that. So that is why it is used. It is basically a reconnaissance phase, but it will help you out with that. Yeah.
Okay, sir.
So it is part of, see, pen testing means not only hacking, there's a lot of information collection and things and all. A lot of people will think a pen testing, if there is, let's say, if you're working about 8-10 hours in a pen test for hacking a thing, 7 to 8 hours will go in identifying, doing the information collection, reconnaissance, scanning, and anything. It is probably, sometimes you can tell it takes about couple of minutes for us to hack application, right? But collecting information, understanding, that takes in a lot of time. Yeah. Yes. Any more questions?
Um, yeah, I have a question as well.
Yes.
So you mentioned about exploiting. So I wanted to ask currently, which is not to say the best, but a starting exploiting system software to recommend
Mm,
to, you know.
no, it depends. It depends on which application you're working on. Uh, so what is the, are you working on SSH you want to compromise, or a web application and things like that, right? There is no specific tools for that. That is why when you open Kali Linux, there are 700 plus tools out there. For different phases, there are different tools that can be used, right? For let's say for doing something like session management in a web application, a cookie editor add-on in a browser with along with your browser is a very excellent tool out there, right? For checking out XSS attacks and all, your browser is more than sufficient. Uh, Again, if you're doing certain depending on the burp is very good tool. So if you go with focus on web application, which is about 90% of the attacks or the work in real time, it's going to be there, right? Whenever you're looking at pen testing job, 90% of the time it is going to be web application security. In those situations, the tools which is very much important are going to be your browser. There is a proxy tool called Burp or Zap that's going to be there. And there are add-ons like, Vaplizer, Foxy Proxy, and there's also Ovis and Retire.js and things like that. These are the one of the things that you can focus more on, right? So I would suggest going much more practical hands-on. That's going to be there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Oh, thank you. Is it a good practice to, let's say that you copy a senior uh, a senior's code and you make it your own? Is it a good practice?
From a developer perspective or looking from a pen tester's perspective?
From a pen test or just like a
Let's say,
script?
yeah. So it is totally fine to use your senior's script, okay? But I would suggest try to understand what's happening in the script and go through the script. What are the steps that is being done by it? You can do, and probably you will always see once you understand how it's working. Everyone's style of working is different. So probably you'll take that tool, rewrite that code into a different approach. All right. So I've done it, See, what happens is that we usually will start off as a script kiddie, meaning using someone else's tool to do our work. And once we gain more understanding, then we'll go into much more modifying that tool or writing our own tool. Right? There's no harm in using someone else's tool, but you should know what is happening out there, what exactly
Yes.
it is doing.
Thank you. Thank you very
Welcome.
much.
Okay, I think we are at the very end of our today's cybersecurity session. We do have another 2 hours. Next 2 hours, we are going to moving forward with our first DevOps session, and it will continue for next 8 weekends. So, and hopefully we can give a proper guidance and a roadmap for those who are right now looking for job or trying to switch their career, or any tech enthusiasts those are having a knack or interest on exploring various different aspects and modules of today's IT industry. I think this is the best platform what we can offer. uh, so guys, if you have any questions about your job hunting, because we are or your career planning, or if you are facing any issues or trouble about, definitely we can guide. And now please remember, our consulting firm is based out of US, and we have so far placed very huge number of our students and other consultant to US job market. But unfortunately we do have a very limited visibility and access like Indian job market or any other job market. So if you are in the US job market and trying to switch your career, if you are not at all IT guy, but you want to have a dream to move forward in the IT, feel free to ask your question, because I think we are pro, and we had a very wide success story which we can showcase.
Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah, I am joining late today because I forgot
I
there is
cannot understand your voice. Like, I am sorry
uh,
because your voice is breaking.
hello.
Yes. Who is the may I
Uh,
know? Bhushan, right?
Bhushan, yes.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I joined late because I forgot it today. So can
Okay.
you say told me what the issue is so we can move in?
Bhushan, first of all,
once.
your network is very slow or has having some issues.
Okay,
Uh,
wait.
you,
Yeah,
if you
Bhushan,
have any,
I,
Wait.
I think he's asking whether can we is joining late, he missed the class. We can you will be getting the YouTube link after a couple of days. We can go through it, Bhushan. I think so. Don't have to worry
yeah.
about that.
Sorry, this is becoming a little hard for me to understand. But yes, as Mr. Karthik mentioned, we are going to, if you are in in our WhatsApp group, uh, uh, if you are in our WhatsApp group, we are going to post the today's cybersecurity video link, and you can get the access of that. Now, one notice, I think next Friday, hopefully, we are going to start our cybersecurity and DevSecOps morning batch. Morning, I'm talking about our job ready paid training, and it will it will continue for next 6 weeks, Monday to Friday, 2 hours daily at 9 a.m. Say 9:30 a.m. Central Time. So those are, because this is the only class where students from European Union and African continent they can join, because US evening batch is not going to align with your time. Though there are certain students who still join in our US evening batch, because that is 7th p.m. Central Time, so somewhere around morning 1 o'clock. But we have an history that students still they have joined because they they want to land the job as soon as they can, so they have that kind of faith, so somehow they manage. But the morning session of US morning session is the best time where it actually it collide and align with uh, European and African students time zone as well. So if you have any question queries about our job ready training, feel free to ask in our group, or you can ping Mr. Devashish, ping me for any other question. One more thing, it is a first come first serve thing, because last batch that thing happened. We have certain number of capacity, a threshold limit, because as it is a hands-on training, we cannot take more than a certain number of students in one batch to make sure that we are delivering what we have planned. It's not about the number, it is about quality for us. And the meeting link is not live yet. Once the meeting is live, because we need to finalize that when the the ongoing batch is going to end, then only we will make that link live. But once the link is live, please try to register as soon as you can, or at least if you have a plan, communicate with any of our trainer or coordinators or me to at least book your slot. Any question so far now?
Yes, how do we know that we are registered? Because it's quite confusing.
I know. Who may I know your name?
It's a Voldy Bo Paulo.
Okay, Valdi. So I know we do have a little bit, complicated website, and we are very aware of that. And hopefully, our new website is already developed. We are going to launch it in our website, I think by Monday, hopefully, if everything's done, because we also need to migrate lots of students, like more than 100,000 students database to migrate. But if you want to have any issues, you can, that's the reason we always try to actively participate in our WhatsApp group. If you have any question, you can ping any of one of our admin that hey, this is a thing, and please also understand that this is like our free training. We have a certain people we can assign, right? But for the paid training, that is a different ball game. They have a separate coordinator, and I am also there. So if you have any issues, if you are in the group, just try to find any admin. You can complete the registration offline as well.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, no issue. And
It
sorry for
just
this website mess. We are aware of that, but it takes little time. It took little time for to fully develop a newer website and try to migrate the whole. I think 120,000 students. Like our DevOps batch, we are going to start our 43 number batches. Okay,
Uh,
so there are a huge number of students who have done our free training, paid training, and they have a certain certification we need to maintain because the certification can be, verified from the URL. So there are lots of stuff we need to complete.
just a small announcement from my end, Menon. So, guys, just look out for the WhatsApp group for the next week. Usually, security webinars, what we have, internship